At 5, a DEA agent accused of killing a cyclist in Salem while on duty had his case presented before a federal appeals court today in Seattle.
At the center of today's hearing was whether the agent can claim immunity from state prosecution because he was on duty, an on-duty federal agent. So it's state versus federal here. Fox 12 investigative reporter Ezra Kaplan has been following the case and brings us the story now. Ezra?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, this morning, each side was allowed about 10 minutes to argue their case in front of the appellate judges. The debate centers around a complex legal theory anchored in the idea that federal law supersedes state law. But at the heart of this case is the tragic death of a mother, a wife, and a pillar of the Salem community. On March 28th, 2023, Margane Allen was riding her bike home from work in Southeast Salem. Video from that day shows a black pickup truck running a stop sign moments before striking and killing the cyclist. Behind the wheel was DEA Special Agent Samuel Landis, who, according to court documents, was conducting surveillance of a suspected fentanyl dealer. Landis had fallen behind the rest of the surveillance team and was trying to catch up when he allegedly struck Allen on her bicycle.
The testimony at the grand jury was that there was no urgency and that there was no hot pursuit.
After months of delay, Landis was charged with criminally negligent homicide on September 6th in Marion County Circuit Court. But Landis's lawyers asked to have the case moved to a federal court so that they could use a defense of federal immunity.
And so the immunity doctrine says if the person is acting as a federal agent, then they are immune from state prosecution.
U.S. District Judge Michael McShane granted that request in December of last year, moving the case to the district court in Eugene. The Oregon Attorney General's office appealed that decision and today argued in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that the case should stay in state court.
So normally you actually wouldn't be able to get an appeal heard before you've resolved the entire case. But this is a special circumstance because if the case should not be in federal court, then waiting until it's been heard is a colossal waste of resources and time and so forth.
An attorney for the state of Oregon argued to the appellate judges that running the stop sign wasn't necessary for Landis to do his job as a DEA agent.
You talk about and focus on urgency with legitimate justification. But are you almost suggesting that there needs to be a necessity for him to have run the stop sign?
Yes, definitely. When a federal officer violates state traffic law, their conduct will only be necessary in that circumstance when there is some urgency or emergency that requires them to do so.
Landis's lawyers countered that running the stop sign was perceived as necessary at the time, regardless of how it seems now.
Everybody can say right now that wasn't the right decision. We know that because we know what happened. But what did he know at the time? Was it reasonable, given everything that he knew about the surveillance, about the need to stay in touch with the team, about the dangerousness of this fentanyl dealer? All of that given, was it reasonable? It was a mistake of judgment. We know that. It was a tragedy that happened. But he made that reasonable decision in the context of law enforcement surveillance.
While immunity is at the center of the case, appellate judges are only tasked with answering the question of whether the case should be removed from the state court into the federal court.
Really, it's about the removal issue. What should this case be in federal court? And I think the answer is just going to be yes or no. And if the answer is no, then it gets kicked back to state court. If the answer is yes, it goes back to the federal district court. And then next, you would have to decide, okay, does the immunity defense apply?
If the case remains in federal court, it doesn't mean that the immunity defense automatically works for Landis. His team will still have to show that running the stop sign was part of his work as a DEA agent. Either way, the victim's family will still be able to bring a civil lawsuit against Landis's employer, which in this case would be the United States of America. For now, the case is on pause while both sides wait for a decision from the Court of Appeals. Reporting in studio, Ezra Kaplan, Fox 12 Oregon.